Record. Welcome to part 2 of the series on preparation for the year-long, and we're going to be talking about the gifted healer today, which is very exciting because it is the most common gift marking that I see on hands, and most of the hand analysts I know have the same comment for me, that this is the most common gift marking that they see. So with gift markings, I'll give you a little bit of information before we plunge in specifically. Gift markings are line formations in the hands. A lot of you know this because you read hands already. Line formations can change. They don't always stay the same. Some do. Not required to change. It's a possibility for change. Gift markings are extra potential talent, meaning if you have one, there's a requirement to live up to the extra potential talent. And the reason it's potential is because you may not be using it very much. But there is a lot more pressure to have gift markings than almost any other markings in the hand. So having gift markings usually adds a lot of pressure to somebody's life beyond just having regular lines in the hand or only your fingerprints. So that's why we're going to be talking about gift markings today, and specifically the gifted healer. It's one of 18 gift markings. It's an intuitive gift marking. And I just finished republishing my book on gift markings, specifically on intuitive gift markings in January. So if you're interested in getting more involved, then you can find more detail on my books on my website, PamelaLanders.com. So we're going to start now with talking about the medical stigmata specifically. I have to get the slideshow up. There we go. Now I have to move some things around my screen in order to be able to, there we go, do what I need to do. All right, Mercury, the gift markings that we're talking about today, the medical stigmata, sits on the palm underneath the pinky finger, the Mercury finger. And Mercury is the messenger god. He's the god of speech, the god of travel, the god of commerce. He's the winged messenger with wings on his caps and shoes. And he also is an alchemist, which we'll be looking into because that's very related to the gifted healer marking that we're looking at today. And Mercury is the element of air, which means there are no boundaries. Air, the sky has no end. This is one of Mercury's great opportunities for growth, is looking at boundaries. This is a picture of the medical stigmata on somebody's hand, located, as I said, on the Mercury mound underneath the pinky. Normally, there are 6 vertical lines. These lines here, we're looking at the vertical lines. And there's usually one that sits over here just outside the pinky. This line qualifies for that right here. So that is, and then they go over towards the end, depending on how many you have. This one has 8 stripes, so they start over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, takes up the entire mound. This is a healer of healers, which we'll be talking about. So 6 is average. When you get into 8 or more stripes, then you're the healer of healers. This one has 5 stripes, so I'd still be in the conversation because they're going to be dealing with this gift marking energy, but I don't consider it a full-fledged. Other hand analysts may. There's not an agreement about that in the hands community. All right, the purpose of the gifted healer, medical stigmata is the legal name for it. Gifted healer is the nickname we all use. To share psychological insights, intuitive and inspired insights, holistic awareness. So it's communicating, right? It's all about communicating in some form because Mercury is the god of communications. He's a messenger god. So sharing your insights with other people is one of the main purposes of this, not holding back, but sharing your insights with people is one of the reasons people come to see you if you have this gift marking, and it falls into the intuitive gift marking category. And since it's under the Mercury, it's about communication. The communication can be verbal or nonverbal. It can be something like doing Reiki on somebody or doing some kind of body healing or energy healing. You can do something like massage or some other kind of body work. It can be talking. There isn't a limit. You can just touch somebody. There isn't a limit on how the communication happens. And it's important to keep this in mind because a lot of people talk about this as a verbal communications marking, and I think it's way more than that, and I think you underestimate the use of it if you're not taking into account that the nonverbal communications you do are just as important. This is something I've added to the conversation based on me having one and watching and talking with other people who are also blessed with the gifted healer. It's holding space and creating a state of peace, really, for other people to be transformed. You don't do the transformation work, they do it, but you're holding the space for it, and you're creating the space for it, and you're creating a safe state so that they feel like they can do the transformational work that they want to do. And they'll gravitate to you, as all of you who have one of these knows, they'll gravitate to you to pour out their life story or sorrows, joy, trauma, excitement, right? Usually it's not the excitement part, but sometimes they do. Usually it's where they're challenged in their life. Because you have this marking, they've learned that they can trust you. Or you meet somebody at a conference, and all of a sudden you find yourself sharing all kinds of things with them, or they're sharing things with you because you have this marking. It's very common, even though they don't know that you have the gifted healer marking, they can feel your energy. Listening is a very important skill with this gift marking. So being a good listener, right, you know how to help people when you listen. Very important that you listen to them. Because how are you going to know what's going on? Like jumping in too soon with your insights may be a problem. And people like to tell their story. They want to be heard. They want to be able to communicate what's going on for them so they have a chance to share their whole story. Sometimes your touch is more important for them than even the communication that you may share verbally, depending on what's going on for them and if you're actually in person with them or you are not in person with them, you don't have as much opportunity for the touch. But the in-person piece, sometimes you just put their hand, like I'm doing, this is me with a guy at a Tantra retreat. We were sharing some very personal things, and I just felt inspired in the moment. I have this gift marking to put my arm around him because I just felt like he would feel better, and it was a very valuable experience for both of us to have that happen. He was really shut down. And these are parallel lines that sit above the heart line. This is not a conversation a lot of people have about the medical stigmata, but it sits above the heart line. So it's like having a two-way flow, and the lines are vertical, so they go up and down, having a two-way flow to communicating between the heart and the mercurial energy. So they can take in and give out on the master path. Some people with this tend to, on the student path, listen more than they share. So that can be a problem. We'll be talking about the student path today. But this is something that's really helpful to remember, is that it uses the heart energy just as much as it uses the Mercury mound energy. And because these lines sit between the heart line and the Mercury finger, they allow for open-hearted communication, which is two-directional, verbal or nonverbal. It can be either. You can be talking and touching, or just talking, any of it. Don't leave out the touching. part, very important. When you have 8 stripes, you're called the healer of healers. And here's some examples of people that we know. Oprah, of course, right? All her TV show for 25 years on network TV. It was huge healing experiences for a lot of people. Steven Spielberg in the movie. So it's from a movie industry perspective. He's not necessarily talking with people, but he is communicating a message. And he often has a message in his movies. So he's using that as part of his method of being able to communicate. This is Louise Hay over here on the bottom left, who set up an entire business based on healing for people, books and authors coming to her, getting published through her business, doing tours. She has card decks. She has a lot of different ways for people to experience healing. So she is a healer of healers. Up on the right-hand side, we have the Beatles. After they went to India, I wanted to get a picture of them after they grew their hair long and went to India, because that's when things really changed in their communication. All you need is love. That's when they started talking about all kinds of different things that were healing experience instead of just singing rock music. Huge, huge impact. Nelson Mandela in the middle, in jail for 19 years or however many years it was, and then becoming the leader of his country. So as a healer, you can also be in a leadership role, right? It's not required that you do this from behind the scenes, but you can be visible. And this over here is Jean Nidtek, who started Weight Watchers, which is a whole different kind of industry, but very healing for a lot of people to have some kind of structure to help them deal with losing weight if that's what they're wanting to do. These are famous people who are just doing their thing with their passion, feeling called in some way to help people, and we know who they are for the most part. These are my friends who are doing Healer of Healers work. Here I am in the middle with my friend Dawn, who has taught me a ton about self-appreciation and activations, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later today. This is my former housemate Jeffrey Van Dyke over here with Derek Rydell, both of whom have very big followings in the self-help industry, both of whom I have done a lot of stuff with. Over here on the right is Frederick Lehrman with me at a live event in 2011. Frederick has a set of audios that are focused on prosperity consciousness. And Frederick is actually on this call with us today and has helped a ton of people by giving them understanding and clarity around how to work with prosperity consciousness. This is my friend Stephanie Beebe, who now lives in Hawaii, but I met her when we both lived in the Bay Area. And she's super psychic and helps a lot of people through coaching with business and has a lot of intuitive skill sets that she helps people with in business, and also really understands money and how to manifest business. The middle down at the bottom is my friend Penelope Jane Smith, who was my business coach for a while, who helped me introduced me to Frederick, and also helped me understand a lot about managing a business. And she has huge healing heart energies. I don't know how many of these people actually have the medical stigmata on their hands, but they're representative to me of the energy of people who are doing healing work in the world. And over here is Lindsay Miller with me, and this is a couple years ago. Lindsay is a photographer, a marketing photographer. She took this picture of Penelope, actually. She's amazing because she can see who people really are. She's highly intuitive and can see who people really are through her camera, and does amazing, amazing photography. A lot of people in the self-help industry have Lindsay do her photography. So this is the healer of healers. This is one of the things that happens as we're talking about once you have 8 stripes. So now we're going to talk about the alchemy perspective of Mercury. As the god of alchemy, Mercury unites opposites. So here's the definition of alchemy, because I know some people don't really know what this word is. And it was created in the medieval times, and probably mostly in Europe, but probably in England as well. as a forerunner of chemistry. And so it's based in some kind of science, right? Some kind of how things work together in some way, based on the transformation of matter. So it's a transformational experience when you're doing alchemy, when you are dealing with something that's alchemical. And uniting opposites. It's transformational when you unite opposites. We're going to get into some tangible examples of this. In the medieval times, it was concerned particularly with converting base metals into gold, or to find a universal elixir like we're seeing today in the world of CBD oil, people talking about that being a universal elixir these days, or to find a universal solvent, or the discovery to cure disease, right? Which CBD claims to be able to do. So the idea of uniting opposite things that haven't been united before to create some kind of healing experience is what alchemy is all about. Mercury's symbol is the caduceus, which is this two snakes on a staff with wings on top, because Mercury is the winged messenger. And some consider these snakes symbols of death and rebirth. Others view it as feminine and masculine, both of which are on opposite sides of one polarity, of one stick. Abraham talks about two ends of the same stick. That's what this energy is about. And the symbol has been adopted by the medical community. You'll see this symbol for a lot of doctors, or you see the symbol sitting on a plaque out somebody's office, then you know that they're in the medical field, at least in our country. And I think somebody told me this is true in Canada when I talked about this before, probably other countries as well. In mythology, there's this caduceus is considered a magic wand, and it's a symbol of authority. Imagine that if you were a medical stigmata holder or a gifted healer holder and you had to use your magic and own your authority with it. Wouldn't that be something? Don't mess with me. Don't infringe on my territory, and don't dishonor me. This is what was Mercury's conversation with his magic wand whenever he would have his caduceus, which he used. Then it was a symbol to people to say, look, I'm doing my work. I'm doing my alchemical work. Don't mess with me. So that would be your opportunity for ownership, is when you are in alignment with the energy of the gifted healer and you really own it, then you don't need to let people mess with you. You can stand in your own power and your own authority and trust your communications and trust your guidance. And that's going to be really important, because otherwise it's going to be hard to do this gift marking. It's an intuitive gift marking. You've got to trust your intuition in order to be successful with this gift marking. The uniting opposites, the alchemy, the spiritual gold. That's what uniting opposites creates for people. So I'm going to give you some examples now. So using your communication, right? We're back to Mercury as the communicator, god of communications. You can support people by tying together two concepts that hadn't previously been connected. This happens especially if you're listening to your intuition, somebody's sharing a story with you about some challenge in their life. You want to help them in some way. It may require using your intuition to take the concept of what they're currently talking about and bringing together something else with it and tying them together. Here's an example. I just recently, once again, was watching Elizabeth Gilbert's movie, Eat, Pray, Love. And when she was on her Bali part of her trip, she had met Wayan and Tootie, and Wayan was a woman who healed her leg when she was knocked over by her soon-to-be husband, but she didn't know that yet, when she was out riding her bike one day. And it was amazing. Wayan was able to do all kinds of healing for her. And Wayan had a daughter named Tuti and was sharing the story about how in Bali, when a woman gets divorced, she doesn't even get her children. And she had to fight really hard and had to give up everything else that she had, sell everything she had in order to gain her daughter in custody. So Liz is hearing this story and she sends an email to her friends saying, I'm celebrating my birthday, but instead of us having a big party where you'd all be giving me these very expensive gifts, I would love to have whatever money you would be doing that, send it to me because I want to be able to build a house for Wayan and Tuti. So she raises $18,000 from her friends and is able to have Wayan and Tuti build a house. Now, this is a new concept for Liz. Instead of celebrating her birthday in a party, she took the need of Wayan and Tuti and she blended it and met this opposite birthday celebration and raised money in order for them to have a home. This may not seem like a really big deal necessarily, or understanding how tying those two concepts together, but it was life-changing for Wayan and Tuti, and it was life-changing for Liz as well. So that's an alchemical healing experience. And I'm sure all of you have, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to, if any of you have examples of this, and if you do, you can start preparing now of how you've created a healing experience for somebody by tying together two concepts that hadn't been tied together before. And here are some possibilities. This is very, very limited list, but these are some ways that you may be doing alchemical healing through music or acting, miming, anything in the arts field, producing art, being a producer in the arts field, being an agent in the arts field, writing in any form, novels, nonfiction, movie scripts, TV scripts, play scripts, painting, or any type of artistic expression can be an alchemical healing process of tying together two concepts that hadn't been tied together before. Massage therapist, any kind of body healer, or a coach, or a therapist, or a public speaker, or a teacher of any type. And I'm sure all of you have examples of this as well, but these are the ones that just came to me immediately when I was creating this list. So those are possibilities of options, and we're going to get into the student path in a little while. But I wanted to check in with you and see if any of you have a story about seeing how two things. Okay, Vicki, would you like to unmute yourself?
Morning. I mean, as you know, Pamela, I'm no little shadow. I have 8 underneath my left finger.
Yes.
So my life is that. So it was all of the above in your last slide. So anything that I have done in my life, I've recreated it. So as a midwife, I walked out of the system and recreated birthing situations and home births, and I've walked outside the system for 20 years. I haven't been to a doctor for literally 20 years. So now I've created the Healing Centre, and now I have people coming from all over the world. So even in my body, mind analysis, space reading, and the things that I do, I've now recreated that into what is now my business, Soul Embodiment. So it just resonated with me sitting there with how it, and it's something that I'm sitting in at the moment, is I've got so much creative thought coming through, and I'm finding it difficult to get motivated around at the moment because there's so many things wanting to be connected.
Yeah.
To be connected, and I'm sort of sitting in at the moment going, what is this connection that I'm needing to recreate at the moment and reformat? I find this happens to me every couple of years, so that makes a lot of sense to me, is that I can't sit in something for too long before I'm like, I have to recreate this again.
You know, Mercury is air, so there are no limits and no boundaries.
Yeah. Frustrating for those around me.
Well, that's a whole other story. Thank you, Vicki. Is there anybody else who has, okay, Anne, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, so this, I agree, this is totally resonating with me. I think I started recognizing it about 20 years ago. Early on in my career, I always found myself as a translator, either between business people and technology people, or finance people and lay people. And when I had my children, it kind of came back again, because I have a son who is on the autism spectrum, and I found myself having to translate between him and his teachers or coaches or whatever. And now he's 18 years old and is doing very, very well. But the consistent theme throughout my life has always been kind of a translator. And I work as a coach, and even with my clients, a lot of times they'll call me and say, I want this, but my life is heading in the exact opposite direction. And after listening to them a while, I reframe it and say, you really want a child, and you're thinking that you're not getting to be a mother, but you're mentoring all of these young pregnant women who you think might allow you to adopt their children, but you're mentoring and mothering them so well that at the end of it, they decide to keep the child and name it after you. So you are a mother. And then once they're able to reframe that, then what they've been wanting more naturally comes in. So this is something that I have recognized over time, and it's so cool. I never connected that to the medical stigmata marking before tonight. So thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, a lot of people don't talk about the alchemy part of Mercury, so that information doesn't get included in a lot of the teachings or readings. And to me, it's like the most critical part of the medical stigmata.
Yeah.
Is the alchemy. So thank you, Anne. That's a great tangible example. Sandy.
So just one quick question. If you've, and then perhaps an example, what happens if you've got a gifted healer on both hands, in that you've got effectively 12 or more lines?
Well, you're beyond the healer of healers. You're the healer of the healers of the healers.
No, don't tell me that.
But you are already, Sandy. You're already doing that and have been for a while.
Okay, yeah, I'll let that settle.
It's an ownership issue, right? It's just an ownership.
Yeah, but I can see, I love the alchemy part of it, that I can see how I will take a complex idea and make it really simple by communicating in a little story for my clients. So that's the two opposites, complex into simplicity.
Yes. It's Mercury, it's communications, right?
Yeah. And
so it's kind of whatever it takes for them to get it.
Yeah. So yeah, I as you were talking, I just saw it as the transformation from complexity into simplicity. And
you know how, Sandy, some people love to make things really complex so they don't have to deal with it. Right? If I make it really complex, it's going to be way too big and way overwhelming. And I can't deal with it. It's too much. And then you simplify it for them. And it's like, oh, okay, now I can deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Lovely.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I don't know about that 12 lines plus bit though.
Well, so it's just, the thing is, this is the hand analysis language, being the healer of healers of healers. You don't have to use that language if you don't want to. It's up to you, but it's also a really good shortcut language, and stepping into the ownership of it may help you align from the law of attraction perspective even more powerfully with who you actually are, and not hiding out or holding back, which I know you have your moments of holding back and hiding out, but you also have your moments of complete ownership of the power of who you are. So this may be a place where owning the healing aspect and the alchemist aspect is wanting to come to the forefront, because here you are in this call.
Yeah. I appreciate your wise words there, Pamela.
Thank you. Just channeling, just doing my gifted healer thing.
Yeah.
Being a role model. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more, and then we're going to, Michael, you're muted. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my I was just looking at my Mercury lines to count them because I haven't done that in a while. And I realized on a print, I would show about 6 or 7 or 8 lines, but then they go around to the side of things. Just kind of don't stop. So that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that in a while. But I started out as a hand analyst, and I was looking at that as my path forward, right? The way I was going to work with people. And then I started studying EFT on the side, and then I got more and more into EFT, and I ended up getting certified in EFT. And I had a real tension about doing 2 different things. I didn't know how that was going to work, and it felt really jarring to me for quite some time until one day I just realized, oh my God, they work together so well. They can be friends, and the hands help me be a better EFT practitioner, and EFT helps me be a better hand practitioner, and they're perfect together. And I only know one other person, in the world who does both together, and that was really helpful to have a role model for that.
Yeah. So that's a really good alchemy, blending 2 seemingly opposites, uniting them. Yeah. Fabulous. Great story. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the year-long program, because we talked about some pieces next week, but I'm going to talk about let's see here. This is the one I'm looking for. I'm going to talk about a different aspect than I talked about last week. If you want to see all the things that I covered last week, I'm so happy to say this, the video is now up on my YouTube channel, Pamela Landers. It's so exciting. Have it there. The year-long class is, I'm talking about a different set of benefits today than I talked about last time. So one of the things that's really important, and someone asked me this question last week, is can you help us with running a business with hands? And I comment on the fact that starting a hands business is difficult, but I realized this week starting any business is difficult. And it's all the same process. All of the stuff to run a business is the same. It's the product that you're providing is hand analysis. So I realized that, yes, I can, because actually I know how to help people. I've been running my own business for many years, and I know how to help people based on what's your hands. So in the process of being in this year-long, because we're going to be reading hands every single session, somebody will be, if it's not everybody, you're going to be gaining more confidence in yourself and your ability and the database. So it will be easier for you to feel confident reading other people's hands, because you'll be more confident with the material. That's really important. A lot of the ways that it currently gets taught, that doesn't happen. And so I'm having taught it myself, taught 4 year-longs in a different format. It was hard for people to remember the information if they didn't read hands a lot outside of the class. And here you're going to get practice inside as well. And you're going to learn how your hand markings impact you in business. This is like your hands tell you so much about how you manage a business, what you want to do in business, how you communicate with your clients, who your client base is. Your hands tell you all of that. And a whole nother conversation is, my friend Dawn, I showed you a picture of her earlier, tells people what they activate. She's been my friend for quite a few years. We've been talking about my activation since 2014. So I'm pretty familiar with it now, but I'm still learning new things. So I activate creating conscious relationships, bonding, and it's often bonding with your work and with your right work, and connecting with the sweet spot. I'm going to have Michael tell you a story in a minute about this. But this is what I bring to the table that's not the same as other hands teachers. This is what I activate. All the hands teachers have different things that they activate. Everybody has things that they activate, and even if 2 people activate the same thing, they don't do it the same way. I've discovered that these activations are soul agreements that Dawn and I have looked at that, and for all the people that I know that she has read about their activations and I know their hands, I also know it's very related to fingerprints. So it's soul agreement. The activations are soul agreement, but it's a different language than we get in the hand analysis world. So it's been super helpful for me to understand this, but I'm bringing this. So the conscious relationships is going to be related to the school of love in my hands. This is super. I've got 9 loops on my fingerprints and 2 in the palm. It's very big for me to have conscious relationships. All my relationships are conscious relationships. This is what I want in life. It's what I create. And I can help you understand about your conscious relationships. And of course, starts with yourself. Duh. You have to know who you are and accept who you are to have your relationships work. And all the places where you're stuck in that, your relationships are challenged. And I know this because I've been there, done that many, many, many times. Bonding is bonding to what's important for you and bonding to your right work and bonding to your relationship with yourself so that you can do your right work based on, in this case, what's in your hands, because that's what I'm teaching. And the sweet spot is when things just completely line up and everything feels, this is so great. And I have examples of this that I'm going to be sharing. So as I was saying, we're going to talk about also who you serve based on what's in your hands and why you are best serving them. Your hands tell you all this. It's amazing. It isn't always brought out, but this is the part of what I do with hands related to business. The class is going to start on May 10th. The time is tentative. It depends on who signs up for the class. So if you want, if you want a daytime class as opposed to an evening class, Pacific time, please communicate with me. And if you're thinking about being in the class, please email me and so we can set up some time to chat. Because I want to make sure that the people who are in this class want to be in this class and the people who want to be in this class get to be in it. And this class is small, maximum 8 people. I was doing 6, but my friend Dawn said to me, well, what if 3 people are missing? You're not going to want to be in a class with only 3 people. It's like, yeah, plus you get to read other people's hands and you get to know everybody really well by having no more than 8 people in the class. We were going to have 2 days off because of holiday stuff here. And private tutoring is going to happen for the class. Every month you'll get private tutoring sessions and there'll be a study group. Depending on how many people in their class will depend on how that gets set up. So there'll be, if we're meeting every week, the 2 weeks that we're not meeting have been extended on to the end. There'll be 52 weeks of classes. And each session we're going to have time for people to be doing readings. You're going to be talking. Sharing your stories when we talk about a marketing. I, of course, share my stories. I'm very open about my life. You learn a lot about vulnerability from listening to me share my stories and some really outrageous things that happen. But I'm doing it in my newsletters already, so it's not like there's much more to tell. But you never know. And, of course, we'll need your handprints. So if you want to be in the class and you don't have handprints, you need to make that happen. The certification we talked about last week, there'll be written exams and oral exams, and you have to read 100 pairs of hands with signatures. And the investment is $8,400 for people who have not gone through the year-long before, which is $700 a month for 12 months. I'm not adding on any interest. If you pay monthly, a lot of people do that. I don't like it, so I'm not doing it. And for people who have taken a year-long before from anybody, and are repeating it, then it's $500 a month for 12 months, $12,000. You can make payment up front, pay for the whole thing, or you can make monthly payments. If you know you want to be in the class and you don't need to talk to me about it, then you can just send $500 to my PayPal account, Pamela Landers, at AOL.com to reserve your space. If you want to talk to me, feel free to do that because I don't want anybody sitting with questions and going, oh, I wish I had. We don't want to do that. Okay. Now we are going to, I'm going to stop sharing that. Are there any questions or comments about the class content or any information I just shared? Okay. So, Michaelin, could you share your story about your experience of how working with me, since you've been in so many classes with me and have read so many of my products or listened to my audios, how working with me has impacted your life? Like, what has happened for you as a result of that?
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to. I started hand analysis with one teacher, and then I continued with another teacher, and then another teacher, and then I found Pamela. So I have some, comparisons I can make that aren't, I don't know what that would serve. But for me, I learn, I have my own learning style as everyone does. And I learned a lot of data. I learned a lot of information. And I learned it in a certain way that to me felt sort of dry in some ways, also illuminating and life-changing and shocking and exhilarating and very exciting. But there was something that was missing that I didn't even realize was missing until I started working with Pamela. And what it was, what it still is a sense of permission and ease and fun that comes from working with you, Pamela, that I never got anywhere else. I was raised like, you work hard and put your nose to the grindstone, and, if you're lucky, things will pay off. And so I was totally buying into that, and I was working really hard. But there's a way that you present information that allows it to be fun and easy. And it's like it was there all the time. My gifts and my talents and skills, even though I go to classes and I study and I practice, they've been there all the time because I've always been a healer. Probably everybody on this call can relate to how you talk about being a healer. People coming to me, telling me their problems, and having an instinct for what people need. That's always been there, but you give it back to me in a way that I can own it for myself, and that just lets me relax and let my breath out, and it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be work. All I have to do really is just show up and tell the truth and be myself, and the healing will come. I can't not do that. Even if I try, I can't not do that. So does that answer
yes, thank
the question that you wanted
yes,
to answer?
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah, she's been in a lot of my classes and has been helping me edit my gift markings book. So she's also read every word of the gift markings books that I've just recently reproduced. Yeah, showing up is the first part of healing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, any other comments or questions at this point before we get into the student path? The gifted healer. Okay. We're going to go into now the student path of the gifted healer. The student path of the gifted healer is blocked intimacy. Everything under the Mercury, everything related to the Mercury finger deals with intimacy at some level. It's all about communications and dead-end relationships. And it starts with you. What's your relationship with your intimacy? What's your relationship with trust? What's your relationship with communication? That's where it starts. A lot of people in relationships tend to project their issues onto other people. Maybe you've noticed this once or twice in your life. Maybe you've even done it once or twice in your life. I'm laughing because I did it so many times before I learned how to read hands and understood what I was doing. So your part of this is, what is your internal dialogue? What's your internal communication? And how do you have a relationship with yourself? And how do you show up in relationship? What are you asking for from your partner in relationship? And it can be somebody you're married to. It can be a close friend. It can be your children. It can be coworkers. It can be clients, anybody. But the question is, how do you show up? And how are you blocking on the student path? How do you block intimacy that leads to dead end relationships? So the dead end piece, here are some examples of different ways that people sort of die to themselves. They hide their head in the sand, or they cover up. They don't want to know stuff. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I don't want to deal with it. It's too overwhelming. I'm just going to hide out. They get bored. They don't listen to people. They're not interested in listening, and they just get bored with what other people have to say, or the kind of communication that's coming from other people doesn't connect with them, so they just shut down, which is a way to die inside. Or you feel sad or depressed, right? There's some part of you that is not feeling your feelings, because feeling your feelings is the answer. I'm in the school of love, so of course I'm going to say that, but feeling your feelings is the answer to knowing what it is that's going on for you. If you shut down your feelings, then you're not going to know. If you're depressed, some people get very addicted to depression because it's a way to actually not feel. You're depressed, you don't actually have to feel your feelings. You can have really dramatic feelings, but sometimes you just don't. Or you just shut everybody else out. You isolate. This is one of the ways you can die to yourself, is you just isolate. And part of the conversation you may be having internally is, nobody wants to hear my story. Nobody wants to hear me talk. Nobody wants to hear what's happening for me. And I've tried it with so-and-so and they didn't listen. Well, maybe the truth is you need somebody different to listen to you. If you're expecting it to be your husband or wife and they're not that kind of person, don't assume that nobody wants to hear you just because your husband or wife doesn't want to hear you. Maybe you need a therapist, or maybe you need a really good friend, or maybe you need a coach or something. You need some place where you get to share. But don't shut down from sharing the truth of who you are just because somebody in your family doesn't want to hear it. Families have a whole different set of rules than everybody else does. Carolyn Myss talks about how the tribe, your family, your clan, their job is to keep you safe and to keep you part of tribal structure. So if you are talking about things or want to share things about who you are that are outside the tribal picture, it scares them and they don't know what to do with it and they don't want to hear it. So they're not going to want to be tuned in because they don't know how to keep you safe in the tribe if you're communicating things that make them uncomfortable. So please do not shut down just because somebody in the family doesn't want to hear what you have to say. They're not the right measuring stick of your truth all the time. Sharing your spiritual journey is one of the master path experiences with the medical stigmata, sharing your spiritual journey with people who are really close to you. Maybe your partners or people who are best friends. If you're withholding your spiritual journey, then you're going to be on the student path. And this is another way that you die to yourself, is by withholding what your spiritual journey is. And some of the reasons that people withhold the excuses they use, which is probably a better language, is, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time to talk about what's going on for me. I have all these things I need to do. I'm busy, busy, busy. Or you've gotten to a stalemate in your relationship. And again, I was talking, that you're in partnership with somebody, but you just don't have anything to say to each other anymore because you've gotten so used to being in disagreement about stuff, where you're trying to share things your partner doesn't want to hear, or they don't understand, or whatever. There are a jillion things that happen in relationship dynamics. So you just stop. And down here in the corner, you can be a really good listener and never talk about yourself. You just let somebody else talk and you ask them questions, and women do this a lot on first dates, right? Men end up talking a lot on first dates because they're usually really nervous. They're usually really nervous and they end up talking a lot. And women listen a lot. Not all women and not all men do this, but it's a common pattern. And you don't get to share yourself. And then you get upset that nobody asked you about you. Or you're talking with a new person, you meet somebody at a conference, and they're sharing a lot about themselves, but they're not asking about you. So where's your responsibility with? Your responsibility with this is volunteering to share some things about yourself. This is a communications marker. It's not always about the other person. As a healer, sometimes your story is the thing that will change people's lives. I do this all the time. I'm always sharing my personal stories. And in a way, what you were talking about, Michael, is giving people permission. People tell me this all the time. I'm so glad you shared that in your newsletter. Or I'm so glad you said that on this call or this class, because it gives me permission to fill in the blank. Or you're just busy helping other people and you don't have time for your own family. We have a woman over here who's coaching some kind of team, right? And she doesn't have time to, she's so busy doing her healing work outside the family, she doesn't have time to share her spiritual journey in her relationship. So these are challenges that can happen on the student path with the gifted healer. I think that's the last slide. Yes. All right, I'm going to... Okay, so any stories, comments, experiences, questions about the student path? Anybody willing to be vulnerable and share their experience on the student path? Michael.
Well, I'll share an easy one. My husband, yesterday morning, we were talking and he said, oh, well, how about if we do this thing tonight? And I got all excited. Oh, great, you know, but I realized I didn't really say that to him. I just kind of said, okay. But inside I was jumping up and down going, oh, how exciting. And I was looked forward to it all day. And then in the afternoon, he texted me and said, oh, I got called by the guys. The guys are going out, so I'm gonna go out with the guys tonight. And I was crushed. I was totally crushed because I'd been looking forward to this thing all day long. And I was mad at him, and I made it this big story about what it was about. He was dissing me, he wasn't listening to me, all this stuff. And then last night we finally talked, and I told him how disappointed I was in what he had done. And he looked at me like I was on a different planet. Like, what are you talking about? And I realized after going back and replaying the situation, he had no idea. He didn't hear me respond. He didn't know it was important to me. He thought, well, I thought you blew me off. I thought you didn't want to do that thing because you didn't say anything. So it wasn't even in my awareness. And I had turned it into a completely personal, like, rejection of me. And it had nothing to do with me at all. It's just another lesson of assuming that I've already communicated something when I actually haven't.
Right, which is a good, very good point, right? This is a communications marker. So yes, what are you sharing? And where are you withholding sharing? Like, what are you holding back?
And are you sure the other person is getting the message?
Yeah.
Maybe you're sharing it, but not loudly enough or clearly enough or frequently enough or whatever enough.
Or in a way that they get it.
In a way that they get it.
Depending on what's in their hands. Right? Which is very complex, right? Any other examples? All right, I'll share one. Okay, so as a gifted healer, owner myself, one of the things I've watched myself do over time is I notice when I am angry about somebody else's behavior, most of the time it's because I haven't told them what's going on for me. It's mostly related to my spiritual journey. Like I've withheld it in some way, and I share a lot about my spiritual journey, but it's mostly about how I don't share my spiritual journey. So this has been a very challenging growth opportunity because I'm thinking I'm doing this really amazing open and sharing, and I can do it in writing. Really easy for me to do it in writing, really challenging for me to do it in person. And that's one of the other things that I've learned, is that I'm willing to be really super open and sharing in writing, but in person it's so much harder to verbalize it, of what's going on for me in my own journey. So this is one of the reasons I write newsletters and I do postings, because I like to write and I like having the time to think it through and how I want to organize the language and everything, as opposed to verbally sharing. And a couple years ago, one of my friends, I had sent her an email telling her that I didn't want to do something, and she called me and she said, normally you'd pick up the phone and call and talk about it. I said, no, normally I would never do that. Normally I actually would write you an email, so I got to get everything out before you start refuting what I'm saying, because she has a lot of energy and tends to get triggered pretty early on in the relationship. So I learned that if I write it all out, then I get to be fully sharing of who I am before somebody jumps in and cuts me off in the conversation. So that's been an important ownership for me about my gifted healer sharing of my journey, is being able to do it in a written format first. And then with some people that I know are good listeners who will hear me all the way through, I can share things verbally. I choose who I do that with, because it isn't everybody. It isn't everybody. And I have some really good friends with whom I share what's going on for me verbally, because I know they're going to listen and not cut me off. And that's big for me, based on other markings in my hand as well. So I own that. It's okay. I'm okay with that. For a long time, I thought, oh, I have to do this verbally. I have to be able to share it verbally. Well, no, I don't. Not required. I can do it my way. I can do it the way that works best for me. So this is one of the great. Yes, please.
Hi, Pamela. This is Fawn from
Hi, Fawn.
Partners. And because I was putting this together right when the share before yours, and so recently I've gone into a collaboration with two other very strong women, and I initiated it. But then they weren't able to hear me, and I wanted to communicate verbally and with my body, which is how I express really well. And they weren't getting it. And I didn't appreciate that they weren't getting my skillful communication, as hard as I was trying. And it wasn't I didn't appreciate it. I really was having a hard time. It was a challenging communication for me. And what I saw with this was I wanted to go into the student. I mean, I just wanted to protect myself. I wanted to run away. I wanted to just like not be in this collaboration. I just wanted to, and I, at the same time, remembered why I initiated it and what really I want to get from it. So I made myself write it in the way they could hear it, not about my story, just about the bottom line kind of, this is the situation. And it was a week process for me. Took a whole week for me to get it in writing.
Yeah.
And they got it instantly.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So that I want to say I feel like I went back and forth from student to master with that one.
Right. And you'll probably do that with a lot of other things in your life, because we do that all the time, right?
Right. In new relationships that matter to me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Fawn, for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I have
All
a
right, Chris.
question.
Okay. Who's that?
This is Ellen.
Hi, Ellen.
If you're not sharing and you're choosing not to share, that doesn't always mean it's the student path, does it? Because
it depends on why you're choosing not to share.
Oh, I'm just like a private person that doesn't really share that much about my life, sort of thing. So would that be considered?
Well, it depends on what kind of intimacy you want, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it's a Mercury marking. It's an intimacy marking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all Mercury is about intimacy because it's all about communication. So I guess it depends on what kind of intimacy you want. But you can't have intimacy if you're withholding things that matter to you.
Well, it's mainly I'm thinking about like with friends or acquaintances and things like that. Like some people, I feel like they overshare their life stories and things like that. But yeah, for me, I'm the opposite. Not that I'm purposely withholding. I just don't feel the need to share, sort of thing.
Okay, well, if you're satisfied with that, you may or may not be on the student path of the medical stigmata. I would need to know about the relationship dynamics that you're dealing with and how that shows up, which is, you know, if you decide to take the Yolong, that's one of the things we get into.
Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. Vicki, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's just brought up something that's going on at the moment. I've had someone who's actually been one of my students throughout my courses over a couple of years, but what's happened is that she kind of moved into a friendship, but she's one of these people that you talked about before that just loves to create more drama until it's absolutely chaotic in her life. But she has this habit of turning up at our retreat space, wanting to do coffee, and we're really busy. And so we've had to, what I'm bringing up here is this understanding of the boundaries around this, which has been a big learning for me about being able to instill boundaries, and now running the retreat space where people come and live with us for a week during the trainings. It's been a really big lesson over the last couple of years of learning how to put those boundaries very clearly in place. And it was very interesting because this particular person, we had been putting some distance because it was only ever about her. And she was never asking anything or even acknowledging or respecting anything that was going on in our own life. It was always only to listen to her. And interesting, last night, I put up a post on one of my Facebook groups, and she put up a pretty damning post that went up with it. And of course we saw it and immediately deleted it very quickly. And then I just sent her a message and said, so what's actually going on? And then I got this, big blast. But my point is that I was able to actually send her a message back and say, well, this is where it's actually at. We hear you, we feel you, but right at this moment, we don't feel like we have anything that we can help you with. We don't feel like we have anything that we can offer you in this time. What you need is beyond our capabilities in this situation. And it was put really well. And I felt very proud of myself. And I felt like, wow, that is really stepping into the mastery of that communication space to be able to actually say, this is how it's at. We're still with love and respect and understanding, but understanding that, sometimes relationships need to end.
Oh, yes. Sometimes relationships do need to end. But yes, that's a good master path example of the Mercury communications. Yeah, you need to stand your ground.
Yeah.
Not tolerate a lot of stuff from people.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Christine, you had your hand up.
Let's see. If I can recall, what I was thinking was, as you were talking, Pamela, I can relate a lot to what you were saying, where I'm a lot more comfortable writing how I feel. So let me write that to you. but also, let me think of what I'm trying to say. I've kind of gone through the same process where with a lot of people, I'm not going to respond right away verbally. And I think there used to be a time where I felt like that might have been a student path behavior, even if I didn't have that language for it. But I've come to feel more like what you were saying, where I'm more comfortable getting all my thoughts down in writing. And with some people, they're never going to hear me verbal, at least with the immediate verbal thing. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, and I'm not going to try. And that's not my student path of that. I know it's not even worth it. So
Right.
I've learned to realize how I communicate better with who. And in general, I'm better off and based on my design, I need time. I need, let me write it. And it's only a few people that I can just be very spontaneous with. And I don't feel like that's a student path thing.
It isn't. I think you need to be very picky about who you are vulnerable and open with.
Yeah.
It isn't everybody. It's not required to do it with everybody. That's
Yeah.
exhausting.
Yeah, I was just saying, so I can really relate to the way that you were saying. I feel like very much the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Thank you for confirming that. Yes, we all have our things. Yes. We get to do it our way. That's one of my favorite reasons that I love hands, is because when I look at your hands and I can see your design, there's a permission. You were talking about this earlier. Michael calls me the Empress of Permission. There's a permission that gets granted for you to be true to your design. And when you know your design, it's easier to be true to it. When you don't know it, it's really hard to be true to it. And you end up taking on a lot of stuff from other people that isn't about you. So being true to your design is what I'm all about, because I know the more I'm true to my design, the happier I am and the easier my life is. It is so much easier to be who I am if I'm being me, as opposed to trying to be what somebody else wants. And, I've been around for a while. I've learned a lot of these lessons the hard way. But I'm now teaching the way I want to teach, which is the other thing that I love about this class, is that we're going to go deep on one portion of the hand. We're going to go and I found out in a conversation I was having with Michael 2 days ago, we're going to start after I do sort of the universal markings. The first sessions are going to be on markings that apply all over the hands. And then we're going to start in the moon zone. Now, traditionally, people would start with the thumb, but we're not starting with the thumb. We're starting with the moon zone because I'm very moony. Intuition is huge in my life. If any of you have been following me, which I think you all have, you know that intuition is a very big deal in my life. So that's where we're going to start. And I was on a call with Michael about something else, and I was just saying, blah, 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 whatever it was. And all of a sudden, I just had this knowing that we need to start with the moon zone. That's what we're going to do. Okay, great. Thank you for that clarity. So that's what we're going to do, because I get to do what I want to do the way I want to do it in this class. That makes me super happy. Any other questions, comments? Are any of you thinking, pondering, considering the possibility of being in the class? Most of you have your names up and not your faces, so I can't see if any of you are acknowledging that. Vicki, you are. Amy is. Okay.
What was
Great.
the question?
Michael, yes. Oh, Michael, oh.
Yeah, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, are you pondering the possibility of being in the class that the year long that I'm going to be teaching?
Oh, I was able to connect in. I've got the medical stigmata, and my partner has the star on Mercury.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
and kind of, sounds interesting, definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm doing these 3 free webinars because I'm teaching a year-long class on hand analysis. And so that's what I was just asking who was interested in wanting to participate in that. Yeah. You might have not understood that question. So
I am pondering.
Okay, Fawn. Great. Yeah, there's somebody else that I've talked with who is as well. So yeah, good. Great. So be in touch with me, please, if you're interested. Send me an email, PM me on Facebook, Messenger, or somehow to just let me know so that we can be in communication about it. So we're all really clear. And then we can set the time based on who's interested. That's really an important piece that I want to do sooner than later. So to know that. And I know, Vicki, if you're seriously interested, you're in Tasmania, so it needs to be this time of day because it's morning for you.
It's yeah. So this one started at 9:30 a.m., which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably the best time for me. I'm most available at that time in the morning. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person. So anything earlier isn't beneficial for me. I'm not.
Okay. Same with Rachel. Yes, Rachel you're in Australia, right, Rachel? Yeah, I think she is in Australia or New Zealand. One of the two.
Australia.
Yeah.
Blue Mountains.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, all the eastern states are on the same timeline.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Cool.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And the YouTube channel is now working, so this will, after it gets all transcoded, probably tomorrow, I will get it up on YouTube for replays, and you can share it with your friends or whatever. So thank you all for being here, sharing your stories and asking questions. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye for now.
You're welcome.